Welcome to another episode of Future Award-winning podcast. Let me tell you something. I am your host, as always, Delta Audrey. Now, if you've been watching the last two episodes, which if you haven't, why haven't you? I told you there was something coming, but I also told you if it didn't happen, don't worry about it because stuff fall through. But it didn't fall through. We're here for the first guest ever on my podcast. So he doesn't really need an introduction, but I'm doing it anyway. This is Dr. Brad Smith, and he was my professor at CSU, and we're here to chat and talk and tell you some things. So, why don't you give us a little intro into who you are and how we know each other?
Dell was one of my students at Columbus State University in psychology, and
Go Cougars.
that's where we got to know each other until he decided he wanted to see other professors behind my back and left CSU to move over to Auburn.
What can I say? I'm not loyal.
And he was one of the great students, and we've been in touch over the years since he's left and graduated.
And as I was getting the podcast together, he was always encouraging me to do it, even though I suffer from, I'm assuming, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, all that good stuff. So, but yet I'm here, and I'm trying to push myself, and so he's going to be my first guest. And what better guest to have than the GOAT himself? So we're just going to roll on into it. So I think it was been coming up on a month now. Charlie Kirk was killed.
Yeah.
Well, he was killed. That's not debatable. But I've heard people use various different ways to describe it. Some people just say killed. Some people say assassinated. How would you frame it?
It's obviously political in nature, at least appears to be, and so I call it assassination. In any case, the man's dead.
Yeah. So he's dead. Yeah. And so in recent years, because I am one of those people, I'm a young millennial who is chronically online, so I have noticed that people are becoming more and more apathetic when it comes to people dying. I remember when those guys got in that Titan submersible. They go see the Titanic, which I am a Titanic fanatic, but I'm also a rational, sane human being, and I would not want to go to a site at the bottom of the ocean, which the ocean is a very dangerous place, and I would not want to mess with it. And those people lost their lives, and I made a video about, just feeling bad because people were dancing on their graves before we even knew there was a grave to dance on. There was that whole countdown thing, and I was one of those people who thought, these people are just sitting at the bottom of the ocean. They're running out of air. Why am I doing something? They were dead the whole time. And people didn't care. It was, the sentiment was basically, they're billionaires, they're dumb, they shouldn't have been down there. And that was maybe, 2-3 years ago at this point. And so I've kind of noticed people are becoming more and more just apathetic about human life. And then so the reaction to, we didn't really know anything about those people, like their background. They're just, random men who have way too much money or have way too much money and time on their hands. But Charlie Kirk was a public figure. I'm not that familiar with, I was not very familiar with him because I choose to not live on the corners of the internet with things that I don't really care for. And so those things tend to not pop up on my timeline because if you spend more than 5-10 seconds on a video, it would be like, oh, you like this? Well, we're just going to flood you with it for the rest of the week. So I didn't know anything about him, but I know things now. And I know that they don't speak ill of the dead, but I also am one of the people who believe that just because you die doesn't mean that people forget how you made them feel. And from the things that he said, he was a very polarizing individual, to keep it PG. So there have been very extreme reactions to his death on both sides. One is basically, who cares if he's dead? And then the other has been, falling at the feet of, he's dead, this is terrible. And so what's your take on the kind of varying reactions to his death, and what do you think that says for how people are kind of moving into this like apathetic state of just not really caring?
Rather, you asked a packed question right up front. But I wouldn't consider him polarizing. The population's already polarized. And had it not been polarized, he would not have been as popular as he was. And yeah, I think it's terrible that he's dead. And, 31-year-old guy, wife, kids, that they're never going to see their dad again.
Who were, if I'm not mistaken, his wife and children were there when this happened.
I don't know if they were there or not.
Okay, because I've heard people saying that they were there and they saw him.
I hope not. That would be even worse. But in any case, the whole nation got put through watching a snuff film over and over again.
Yeah, because that video was circular. I didn't see the video because, again, I don't linger on corners of the internet where people just randomly post videos of people being killed.
But as far as being a right-wing figure, he was fairly moderate in a lot of his ideas, and he was really well liked. And so a lot of people were real mad. And it was ugly to see people on TikTok, celebrating.
Yeah, there was a lot of that.
And so what do you think the reaction is going to be? Of course, people are going to get even more upset. Yeah. And that polarization is going to get even deeper then, because that's just the nature of political tribalism and setting up that us versus them narrative.
Which is, it seems to be a lot of either you're over here, you're over there.
And social media plays into it. As you mentioned, you don't want to click on things because then your feed's going to get swamped by this material. But the problem with those is you only get to hear what you already agree with.
Yeah.
Because those algorithms, you don't pay for social media because you are the product.
Yeah.
And so
social media is basically like an echo chamber.
And the longer they keep your eyes on there, the longer they keep you engaged, the more they can make off of you. And so it'd probably be a good idea to go out and see the other side, or at least mess up their algorithm. Start searching for some really crazy things like platypus mating habits and things like that. Just to really
now,
mess up their algorithm.
I did, when his videos would pop up, I would kind of see like, oh, who is this guy? And some of the things that I heard him say were, for me, what I believe, not great. But then I also know that these are clips, and I do know context doesn't matter. But then also, some things, even when put in context, just are not that great.
Yeah.
Just about the thing he said about basically black women not being, I guess, smarter or as intelligent as other races of people. I don't know his exact verb, but I think he was talking about Miss Kamala and Miss Katanji, and that's what he was referencing. And it just seems that I feel that obviously you can't tell people how to feel. So if people were harmed by what he said, they, can feel how they feel about his being there. But then also on the flip side that he did have a family, and there are going to be people who did like what he was saying. I just for me, I don't like, there seems to be a lot of revisionist history now. And I think that seems to happen when people who maybe a little questionable to some people die. But I guess in general, if you have a family member who in life maybe wasn't the greatest, and then, everyone becomes a saint when they die. And nobody wants to really talk about the bad things that he, then I think for me, if we're going to have like a balanced conversation, it should be about like, he had his base of people that enjoyed what he said, but also let's talk about the things that he was saying, which actually he was a victim of gun violence, and it seemed that he lobbied very hardly against not having strong gun regulations, and I mean, that's very ironic. And he also talked about empathy not really being a thing, which is also ironic. And some of the last words that he had were spreading misinformation about various things. And so it just seems like the whole ending is very ironic, Shakespearean.
It's indicative of where we are as a society right now, though. And as far as people saying things that you don't like or I don't, lots of people say things and do things that I don't like that I think are horrific, like Taylor Swift.
Oh, well.
And so
just saw her movie, go get her album, like the show girl out now. Like, they're working for the promo, Taylor.
And so what I do is I just don't watch.
That's really what I do. Like I said, I don't look at those kind of things.
I mean, there's probably going to be a book out there that I don't want to read, so I do this radical thing and not read it. But we're in this place in this world where people are also connected 24/7.
Yes.
And
which could be a good thing or a bad thing.
It's turned out to be a bad thing for the most part. Because if people, it used to be, so you don't like somebody at school, you should get to go home.
Yeah, but now you're like always connected, and I don't think it's normal to be that connected to people.
And it follows you around. You can't get away from people that you don't want to get away from, and so people start thinking it's their right to not be offended.
Yeah.
And frankly, I've read the Constitution pretty closely, and I haven't found that right in there.
Yeah.
But I do know that if you're not offended by something at least once or twice a day, you're simply not paying attention. There's plenty of offensive things happening in the world.
Yeah. Which is why when people say, like, woke's being a bad thing, I'm like, well, technically, there are a lot of things that woke just means being aware. And so if you're aware of things that are bad, like people are starving, people are hungry, that should make you angry.
You should be mad about
You should be mad about those things. And in his case, the things that he was saying, if you were a part of those groups that he was talking about, and why wouldn't you be upset by those things?
I'm sure they would be upset.
So, I mean, people acting like, oh, why are you so upset? He was this or that. Well, he wasn't talking about you. So you probably wouldn't be upset. And then there is also a thing of, if you don't like what someone is saying, you don't have to engage, which I find more and more that people don't seem to realize that the algorithm doesn't care if you're watching because you love it or you hate it. It just cares that you're watching. Yeah. Attention is attention, whether it's negative or positive. So I'm sure people like him or people who do rage baiting, and they don't care if you like them or not. All they care about is you're watching, and that's putting revenue in their pocket. So obviously, there are some people that I've heard who don't even really believe the things that they're even saying, but they know that it'll make people upset.
Yeah, it'll get the clicks.
And that's really all that matters in a click base.
I'm not worried about their business plans or really about what any of the sides are, any of the influencers on either side are saying. What my concern is right now is that our civilization, our entire society, we're in a really bad place.
Yes.
We've gotten to the point where, like, well, you said something bad, so it's okay that you were murdered.
Yes, and that seems to be the consensus. And I think, I was thinking about it, it's like a slippery slope because now, like if I remember correctly, maybe from one of your classes about everyone who's ever fought in the war thought they were fighting for the right, thought they were the good guy. And
everybody thinks they're the good guys.
Now, who's to say somebody couldn't just be like, well, you cut me off in traffic.
Right.
So.
Well, what people have to understand that if we're going to justify on one case,
yeah,
that Charlie Kirk said something mean to somebody, therefore, his murder is justifiable.
Yeah.
What people need to understand is eventually the rules of engagement are always accepted. Eventually the other side's going to be like, now you hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
And so this is justified.
Like I tell people, the pendulum always swings back around. And when you, say, with this recent administration, a lot of things are happening that's going to affect a lot of different groups, and people are kind of like taking the point of, well, that's not my problem. But one, I don't know how, I'm not here to force my beliefs on other people, but I feel something doesn't have to affect me directly for me to know that it's important. And two, it's not your problem today, but who's to say you're not going to be the one on the chopping block next, and then you're going to want to be someone's problem.
Well, I'll make it worse. It's going to be your problem next.
More than likely.
Because whatever people are applauding now, it's going to be used against them later. I mean, the whole cancel culture movement and everything that was going on for a while. And then it got turned around on Bud Light and Target and everything. It was the left that kind of set those rules of engagement, and it was the right that was complaining about it, and then they started using it. And so I don't know, I wouldn't even go so far as to say it was hypocrisy, but there's a certain amount of schadenfreude that's going on there.
The funny thing, because I'm seeing people, trying to, like the right always saying about you can't, censorship and all this stuff. They, and they were very much big against when they were removing signs and removing statues, and they were very, staunch. You can't do that. And now, like you said, these same people are adopting the same kind of ideology that they claimed that they didn't like. So the basis, I kind of put it as everybody wants to be the only one talking. And if you're not saying what I want you to say, what I think you should be saying, then you shouldn't talk.
Well, it's about power.
Yes.
And when it comes down to it, it's about power. And power is just the ability to get people to do what they otherwise wouldn't do.
Yes.
And each faction out there is trying to reshape the civilization in their own image.
That sounds like a superhero movie.
A little bit of a supervillain, right? Yes. But, in any conflict, everybody thinks they're on the right side of it. When in truth, you're both villains.
Mic drop.
I mean, it's like World War II. Clearly, the Nazis were bad. I have a very strong anti-Hitler stance that I don't feel like I have to defend to anybody, so I don't want to get into an argument about that. Mm-hmm. But in fighting the Nazi regime, we also firebombed Dresden and killed a bunch of civilians.
Yes.
And so are we justifying the death of civilians that had nothing to do with the Wehrmacht or the Nazi Reich?
And some might say, well, to circle back to Charlie, I think one of his things was about, a couple, I don't know his exact phrase, but basically a couple gun deaths in order to have the Second Amendment rights is okay. And now he himself found himself a victim of it. So people were bringing that up as to say,
right.
I guess to try to justify, you died by the words that you were spewing.
Well, I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment. So far as I want them to repeal the National Firearms Act, because I should be able to have a machine gun. Mm-hmm. That is my opinion. All right? And because...
What do you plan to do with them?
Hunting.
Okay.
Just have to get a lot of deer lined up.
Okay.
But what I would like to see, though, is... And we used to have firearms courses, like in high school. Mm-hmm. People would learn marksmanship and how to properly handle it. And really, cars are dangerous as well. But I would like I'd like people to be able to show that they know how to handle the machine, that they can make it do what they want it to do, and then they're held accountable for what happens with that machine.
Isn't that what driver's ed is supposed to be?
Just like your car. So we can have a firearms ed. Have people taught how to use it. They demonstrate that they are aware of and they can take care of it correctly. They can use it properly, and then they're held accountable for its use.
Hi, if you've enjoyed what you've heard so far, let's keep this party rolling over across social media platforms. Follow the Let Me Tell You Something Instagram account, Let Me Tell You Something, LemmeTellUSumthing, the letter USUMTHING. Follow me over on TikTok at Deldinautry, DELDRIANAUTRY, or on X at Pt.1, LATRISTAN. Number 1. Now let's get back to more of Let Me Tell You Something. And I think that's another thing to go into the next point about this conversation about Charlie and people saying about free speech and all that. People want to say things. Mm-hmm. But they don't want to necessarily face any kind of blowback for what they say. Like, they want to say their point, but they don't want to be challenged about it, have to answer for it. And, I mean, when people say, I always think of I can invite you into my house, but if you start screaming and hollering and I tell you to leave, I'm not saying you can't scream and holler.
You just can't do it.
You just can't scream and holler here. You can go scream and holler, not in my front yard, but,
on the street.
Yeah, wherever you want to scream and holler. But no one's, I'm not stopping you from screaming and hollering, just not here. And I think people just think that they should just be able to do whatever and not have any consequences for it. So when people say free speech, what exactly is free speech, and is it actually free?
I don't really think that we have much in the way of what's called free speech, or really rights for that matter, because they're alienated all the time. And we do get away with saying a lot more than people in other countries would.
Like, I remember when TikTok went down for the first time for 5 hours, and people were on this Chinese app called Red Note something.
Yeah.
And people were complaining about it, and people were like, you do know this is China.
Yeah. China
doesn't play about you speaking and doing these things.
Right.
And so, like you said, other countries,
are a lot stricter. We've got a lot more leeway. And people probably should be held accountable for stupid things that they say. That doesn't mean they should get their neck blown out.
Yeah, but obviously not. But definitely, if you go in somewhere yelling bomb in the airport, one, that's just dumb. But also, you may have to answer for that.
And you're probably going to end up in a whole lot of trouble for doing something like that.
As you should, because you're...
But, for me, I'm an Eastern Orthodox Christian. And I believe that is the one true church and everybody else is wrong. Period. And I hope that they come to the light. I should be allowed to say that.
Okay.
And if anybody's offended by it, well, be offended.
Because I'm sure there are people who others religion who believe the same thing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they think they're the one true religion.
Which is also like, when this is all over and everyone's kind of standing, it's going to be like, huh, that's right all along.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough.
I was right all along. But I just think when people say like my free speech is being infringed on, because I've noticed that people have been getting fired and terminated from jobs for some of their comments with Charlie.
Right.
And for me, it just seems like there's not a consistent rule of thumb for that. It depends on, it really just seems like it depends on, well, I am aligned this way and I don't like that you said that. Right. So now I'm going to enforce my authority. Mm-hmm. But you said this, which was equally as offensive and hurtful to somebody else, and you let that slide. Yeah. And so, I mean, when people bring that up, kind of, I guess the question is like, how do you fix that? Or can you even fix that?
Yes, we can, because we didn't used to be that way. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, we live in a very, very low trust society. And we live in a society now where people have gotten intellectually weak. And I would go so far as to say that people generally lack purpose in their life. Mm. And so they go seeking alternative purposes. Now, part of that is I think that some of we have our main problems that we've had since there's been humans. Where are you going to sleep? What are you going to eat? Are you relatively protected from the elements and wild animals and stuff? And then once all those problems are solved, which the only real problems that we have, we're problem solvers. If we don't have a problem, we're going to go make one up. We have to have some problem to fight. We have to have some dragon to slay.
That's one thing you told me. Don't worry, you're never going to run out of problems.
No, you'll always get a new one. And if you're dramatic enough, you will invent some really interesting ones.
Have a whole argument in your head. I do that from time to time. I rehearse situations just in case, it may come up.
No, but it's very natural for humans because we are problem solvers. And throughout human history, poverty and starvation has been the norm. We are living in the abnormal time right now of extreme wealth considering our history. And so we don't have a lot of problems. And so we're making mountains out of molehills on some things. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, do you really care what somebody over in Indonesia or Southern California thinks about you?
Not typically. Although sometimes, when you engage in online discourse and people say something, you're like, ouch.
It makes it feel immediate.
It's like, ouch, it? That hurt. But it's also like, well, you have a picture of a dog for your avatar, so you're probably not even a real person.
And then there's that psychological distance. He might be in San Diego and you're over here in Auburn, but that psychological distance is reduced because you feel like on a lane. It feels so immediate when it's really not important.
Not really.
That person doesn't pay your rent.
No. And I think that people, because we're so connected digitally, all of this stuff, and it's very much instant gratification. Like you put something out, people flood to comments, and then, people agree to disagree. Which I've noticed that you can pretty much there's always an audience for everything.
Oh yeah.
And there have been videos that I've clicked on, and I'll go to comments and I tell myself, this is why they tell you not to read comments, because the things that I see in comment sections, and I thought, this is what y'all got, this is what y'all are bonding over.
I only read the comments.
Oh well. But I do not. Well, I do, but not.
A lot of the social media communication is what I find interesting about is how remarkably shallow it is. Mm. I mean, people are not getting into depth. They're not having those deeper conversations. They're not
definitely not in a Twitter or X or a TikTok comment section.
No, when you got some limitations, and really, how many things are important that was typed with somebody's thumbs?
Probably nothing. Yeah. Although sometimes because I make comments occasionally. You may occasionally see me in the corners of a random TikTok comment section, and then I get a bunch of replies for whatever I said, and then sometimes I think, wow, I really want to respond, and then I do what you say. Who cares what you think?
Yeah.
Who cares? I don't really care because not that I think that I know everything, but I know a lot, and I know I'm right in this instance of or I'll be like, I could be wrong, But who really cares?
Well, I've sat there and I've looked at it. I mean, I start wondering why the person would say something like that, and then I wonder what's for dinner. Or alternatively, I think that this person's taking themselves way too seriously.
Yeah.
Let me make their night a lot more interesting now.
Sometimes, because I always forget that, just because I posted something last week, and then a week later, people are still commenting about it. And then I think, this was last week. I quit caring about this after I typed it up. But then I'm like, well, you're just coming across this. Yeah. And so sometimes I go and I look, which is why I don't tweet very often, because anytime I've usually ever tweeted, people come at me. And I thought, wow, I'm so powerful. I should really learn to use this for good and not evil. But when people come around and they say things in comments, it's just like, people, I feel like if you had to actually say whatever you just commented to the actual person, how many people would actually say that? Or if whatever you're about to type out was said to you, would you still type it?
You know me.
And the problem would be you would still type it.
Yes, I would.
You would still type it.
There was nothing that I would say in private that I would not say directly to somebody's face.
And for me, I don't tend to say very hateful and harmful things online very much. So if I typed it out, I probably would say it to you. But also, I'm a troll, so I do like to be funny. And so in those instances, yes, I would definitely say it because I think it's funny.
And sometimes people need to hear an ugly, unvarnished truth. Like, nobody really cares what you're wearing.
Which is why I hate get ready with me's. When people say, get ready with me, and I leave comments because, people, and then they'll say you're a hater. Well, yes.
Yes.
I am a hater. I hate get ready with me's because, one, I'm jealous. Why aren't I going? And two, how dare you try to subject me to watch you get somewhere that I'm not going to? And so, sure, I could be like, I don't care. I'm not going to leave a comment. But I'm bored and I'm in between something right now. So, and it's all in good fun. You don't have to care what I think with my haterish comment. But I'm not going to tell you something hateful. I'm just like,
Well, the problem that comes with the social media and the algorithms and people living in their own echo chambers is really fringe ideas start seeming like they're popular.
That's the thing. Something may seem very loud on social media, but in real life, people may not even know this even exists.
I mean, people could have a very fringe, crazy idea, and they're surrounded by people in social media that share that, and so it's all they're hearing. They think it's more common than it is, or more acceptable than it is. And they never actually hear another side that says, hey, you're being stupid. Here's why. And so they're never subjected to it. And so they don't develop that thicker skin to where they can actually deal with that conversation if somebody disagrees with them. They're going to freak out, which is unfortunate. And we are making, as I said, we're making an entire society of very intellectually and emotionally weak people.
Who don't really know how to deal with, people not liking their outfit.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to deal with adversity. Like, yes, those jeans do make your butt look big. And not big enough, baby.
This has been part 1 of Ignorance is Bliss, Knowledge is a Burden, a conversation with Dr. Smith. Join us next week as we continue our deep dive into how social media shapes our emotions and empathy. Remember to follow us on all socials, and don't forget to leave a comment and subscribe. See you next week on Let Me Tell You Something with Deldrin Autry. Bye.